Patrick, or Paddy Canal. I'm the Cloud and Enterprise Business Group Lead for Microsoft New Zealand, which in non-Microsoft speak means I'm kind of like the Azure Cloud Platform Lead.
I'm Andy Bedford from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I've had the pleasure of working with David and Paddy over a number of years. My role is actually to look after service providers in New Zealand, and we found that Azure Stack has been a really, really strong value proposition for service providers. So, looking forward to talking that through today.
And hi, I'm David Garrett. I've been with Umbrellar for a number of years, currently in a solution architect role. Been involved with our cloud and Azure Stack implementation from the get-go for the past couple of years.
So Dave Howden, Head of Cloud at Umbrellar, and accountable for bringing all of our solutions to market, and the team that do some fantastic things with all of the customers and partners. And I think what's on the hot topic for today is really to go over the exact proposition of Azure Stack and how it feeds into the mission that both Umbrellar have got and Microsoft have got, enabling every New Zealand business to do brilliant things with the Microsoft Cloud, and we absolutely believe that. But I think it's important just to take a bit of a step back and get this from the Paddy Cornell, the gospel of truth, on why Azure Stack exists within the cloud solution set across Microsoft. Because there's a reason you brought this guys to market, and there's a reason we work with you so closely on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no secret that when everyone started talking about public cloud, that maybe it was a little bit of a shock to a lot of organizations, and perhaps pushing 100% cloud was realised pretty quickly that it's not necessarily going to happen for everyone, and nor should it, to be honest. I mean, it'd be great, but not everyone can do that. We realised pretty quickly from some research that hybrid cloud is a strategy that a lot of organisations want to go with, and I think that research has shown with the likes of IDC, even at a New Zealand level, where we've seen that over 75% of organisations are looking to adopt a hybrid cloud strategy. Globally, it's 84%, so you can see there's certainly a momentum shift in that direction. And so when we thought about how can we really maximize the benefit of Azure but then enable a hybrid cloud solution, the answer was Azure Stack. And that took quite some time, but we got there with a great solution that's enabling customers to land what they need on premises, but maximize the power of Azure as an extension of Azure when and if they need it.
That's ever more prominent in the scenario we find New Zealand businesses in, right? And the fact being that we are so disconnected as a country, albeit we run everything off the internet these days, but we are 3,000-4,000 miles away from the nearest large rocky landmass that is Australia, and we don't have the pleasure of hosting Microsoft Azure here in country. And we saw that along with Microsoft and decided to democratize the public cloud and bring it here. And what really we want to get to over the next 20 minutes or so is actually let's get into the meat and the detail of, okay, so remove all the slideware, remove all of the buzzwords, let's get into how this thing's built and the commonality of how it exists. And there must be a set of use cases, right? And we've got one distinct use case in New Zealand, being the fact that we are disconnected from any form of hyperscale cloud here and needing to bring that public scale mindset and philosophy to New Zealand, which we've done. But Andy, other common use cases for Azure Stack that you're seeing across your customer base and why you're seeing the traction that you're seeing?
And I think one of the key elements of it is, and look, one of the things we're trying to do as an organisation is make hybrid IT simple. And I've got to say, having been in this sort of role for a number of years, we, the industry, have done the very poor job of making hybrid IT simple. We've made it incredibly complex. And one of the things I really like about Azure Stack and why it resonates so well for end user customers and for service providers is actually it does make the concept of hybrid IT, having some workloads on public cloud, some on local instance in your own data center, it actually simplifies that properly. It does the job. It does what it says on the box.
Sure.
And that's why I think a lot of positivity about it. There's a good uptake on it. It actually does deliver on that promise, which in the past has been really, really complex. Lots of different deployment methodologies, different software packages you need around, your on-prem stuff, your cloud stuff, different costing. Azure Stack and Azure kind of takes that away.
Yeah, I think we're at definitely an inflection point in terms of cloud adoption, where the answer generally strategically, and there are edge cases to this, but predominantly there's a business that leans towards AWS, they lean towards GCP, or they lean towards Azure, with a significant blocker sometimes in terms of they just can't go all in because of some edge workloads that need to reside within different data sovereignty regulations or different levels of compliance. And that fundamentally really is the reason that we've made such a significant investment in this with Microsoft, right? We're one of the first 16 providers in the world to deploy Azure Stack in a multi-tenant scenario. And for a little company in the bottom end of the world, we're pretty proud of that. And I think it's a journey that we've both gone together over the past.
So
past
New
2
Zealanders
years.
are always great at innovation, so we're carrying it on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the uptake on Azure Stack in New Zealand has actually been really good compared, as a percentage of population, as it were, compared with the rest of the world. So, New Zealand's been an early adopter on this. We've seen this in our own organisation. We were at the leading edge on it all, and that's been great.
So we've talked a whole heap around Azure Stack and its consistency and the fact that it's an extension of the Azure mindset down into what's commonly being termed an appliance. So Andy, HPE, along with a whole load of other OEM providers, have been on the roadmap for Azure Stack since its inception. Talk us through the physical makeup, right? Because this is cloud in a hybrid form, so there's a physical entity to it. Talk us through how HPE have approached that and the fundamentals that go into HPE's proposition for Azure Stack.
Yeah, certainly. Look, we've had a very, very long, very deep engineering relationship with Microsoft. It's over 30 years of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and Microsoft working really closely together to deliver solutions to customers. And Azure Stack kind of built on a lot of that very, very in-depth, in detail technical expertise that we got in joint labs and joint development labs and that sort of stuff. Azure Stack was able then to be built on our kind of standard platforms, which simplifies it, keeps the cost, relevant, but it's very much put together as an appliance. So there are fairly locked down specifications on it. That's so that everybody can support this. It's the supportability of this is actually done by Hewlett-Packard, by Microsoft as well. So the actual hardware is based on our Proliant DL380. There's SSD capability built in. It's building storage spaces direct in a sort of hyper-converged manner into basically what is a DL380 Proliant sort of platform, along with the associated networking and kind of power requirements, etc., etc.
And I think that's a key differentiator for how Azure Stack's been brought to market in terms of it's an integrated appliance that's supported by Microsoft and the OEM vendor, HP in this scenario, with the service provider operating it. And that's pretty new in the market in terms of generally the service provider has access to all of the code base and everything, and we actually find ourselves in a position where we can't actually go and tamper with the Azure Stack code. We can't go near it because that's a Microsoft supported environment, and that's done for security reasons and hardening by default and least privilege access by default. So it's a different place for us to work in with a service provider, but actually it's quite a refreshing one because it allows us to hit a whole different bar of security standard thanks to the work that you guys have put in.
Well, yeah, it's kind of different for us as well because normally there's an infinite choice of capability of CPUs, of drive sizes, etc., but with Azure Stack, that is fairly well defined.
Simplifies it really, doesn't it?
Simplifies it, and it does mean that what you actually put on premise is then been, it's had the heck tested out of it, so it's going to be reliable, supportable. Firmware levels have all been, tested, so that's part of the benefit of Azure Stack.
Yeah, and in the scenario where Umbrellar have taken the Azure Stack to market, that's the process we've been through with you guys is to understand what a multi-tenant Azure Stack looks like, because ultimately we're servicing public cloud workloads out, so customers don't have to go through the challenge of actually hardware procurement, installation, firmware management, the whole piece. We've done all of that, and we're selling this out in exactly the same way of which you procure Azure directly, right? A multi-tenant Azure Stack available to be signed up for and deploy workloads in exactly the same way.
All managed by you.
That's right. And the consistency is one of the main things. So in terms of consistent appliance, that's absolutely great. It allows a service provider us to have a robust way to manage interface with the hardware and take that value to market. But at a component level, David, you've been absolutely on the bleeding edge of the engineering team with the Microsoft guys over in Redmond. So do you want to talk us through some of the consistency in terms of software and the components that make up the Azure Stack itself at a code level?
Yeah, certainly. So look, right from the get-go, there's consistency there. From the moment you stand it up and you get presented with the portal to log in, you log in using Azure Active Directory credentials, so the same credentials you'd use to log into the public Azure portal. It looks the same. Navigation is simple. The blades, the icons, the functionality that's available in the public Azure portal is exactly the same within the Azure Stack portal. As I said, we've deployed our multi-tenant Azure Stack environment backed off Azure Active Directory, so customers can log on using their own Azure AD tenant credentials the same way they log on to their Office 365 environment, to their Azure environment. supporting things like multi-factor authentication if the customer's got that enabled. All the way through, the security is there. You've got the role-based access control. Again, the same way you can do in public Azure. You can scope users to subscriptions, to resource groups. You can give them the ability just to read, to contribute, or to be owner of subscriptions, to, I guess, really control what can or can't be done within that environment. Within the Umbrella Cloud, the Umbrella Azure Stack, what we've got is currently a single region. So we have an NZ North region stood up in Auckland. Once it's available, then we'll be making an additional region or regions available, and that's effectively functionality that we're waiting on, but every intention to deliver that as and when we can.
And it's worth talking to the facility itself. I mean, we've partnered with Microsoft being the most trusted and compliant cloud provider globally, and that goes through to the extensibility that you guys have done with your GDPR compliance regime across the whole of the world and making that a mandate and making sure that those same security standards and hardening procedures flow into the Azure Stack as well. And the facility that the Umbrella Cloud powered by Azure Stack is hosted in, David, just talk us through the facility itself.
So it's in a Tier 3 plus facility, which is actually operated by Datacom. In Orbit Drive in Auckland, best in class when it comes to what's available in country.
I think the key here is when we're working with the most trusted and compliant cloud provider in the world, actually security is ingrained from the people, the processes and the technology, including the facility. We weren't going to bring the most compliant appliance in the world into a suboptimal data center footprint to make sure that the same level of regulatory compliance is applied to the whole end-to-end delivery and the service level agreement that we push out.
Absolutely. As I said, the facility itself is fantastic. The upstream connectivity is provided wholly by Umbrella. Again, multiple upstream 10 gig diverse paths out into the internet.
So we've talked about the appliance itself and the fact that it's highly consistent and the fact that Umbrella have worked to the best degree they can at making sure the physical facility, the physical hardware and the processes around managing and operating an Azure Stack hold the highest levels of compliance to make sure that there's as little difference possible between consuming Azure Stack through us and the Microsoft Cloud. But let's talk about this in operational practice. So clients are deploying workloads onto these machines, both in the public cloud and down in the Azure Stack. David, just talk us through the consistency at a deployment level and what it means from the day-to-day, whether you're running a DevOps practice, and just talk us through the day-to-day life operating inside a hybrid computing footprint.
Yeah, well, thanks. You bring up a really good point. That was, I guess, one of the key attractions to us when we were looking at Azure Stack in the first place was, I guess, the consistency that is available between public Azure and what's available in Azure Stack. Yes, anyone can log into the GUI and drive the GUI and do deployments or the like. When you're trying to do automated type workflows and you want to use the ARM API, you want to do programmatic deployment, set it up within a workflow, that's where the consistency really starts to shine. The fact that you can create a template with your deployment workflow, which might include load balancers, virtual machine, storage accounts, and have that configured so that you can deploy it either into the Azure Stack environment or the public Azure environment, basically just by changing the endpoint. That's where you start to see the value add. The APIs are consistent across the resource providers that are available within Azure Stack, which currently are the core resource providers of compute, storage, network, and Key Vault. So those are available within those providers. I think I mentioned within network, for example, you get all of the functionality that you get, all the core functionality that you get within public Azure around VNets, subnets, network security groups, load balancers. Again, on compute, the A, D, DV2, and some additional VM types now. I think like the F-type virtual machines are all available within Azure Stack. So you can create deployment templates based on those machine types for public Azure and repoint them, apply them directly against the Azure Stack environment.
So that's great, and that covers off the technical consistency between Azure and Azure Stack. But I think there's a whole load of soft procedural and operational benefits that come with this as well. So, I mean, in terms of some of the benefits our customers are seeing, and quite rightly so, right? If you've got multiple cloud environments to service, you've got to train your people 2, 3, 4 times. And actually, at an operational procedural level, it makes a whole lot of sense to have things consistent, right? So single skill set. If you know Azure, you know Azure Stack. Single set of operational procedures between the two, and actually the ability to leverage business continuity and disaster recovery services across all the multiple clouds, right? So what are Microsoft at now with Azure? Paddy, 50 data center locations globally.
54 globally.
54 globally, and then plus Azure Stack providers as well.
Yep. And then you've got over 140 edge nodes across the globe, and we're something like the third largest telco and network
Right.
available. So
Yeah.
heavy investment in the platform.
Yeah, and a common use case for providers for customers to have deployments of production workloads in one region and then providing DR and business continuity services out of another for geographic resiliency. And we see that no differently with what happens here in New Zealand, right?
Absolutely.
With production workloads deployed on the Azure Stack, with then continuity services serviced out of Australia East or Singapore or the US.
Yeah, that, or even we've seen customers where the back-end web servers, for example, the database servers are being deployed onto Azure Stack or running on Azure Stack, and then just taking advantage of some of the edge services from Microsoft, like Azure CDN, present that content globally.
Yeah, sure. And so how does that play through in terms of service level agreements for end customers? I mean, there is a expectation of what public cloud delivers. And I think it's a common myth, actually, Paddy, as well. And I think that as public clouds become far more prolific across the whole of the industry, I think that the designed for chaos theory is where the industry is starting to move to. I don't think there's an expectation now that any of the hyperscale providers provide single instance availability of 5 nines, for example. But in terms of service levels offered, what are Umbrellar offering in terms of the consistency of service level agreements between us and Microsoft?
So across the Azure Stack platform, generally we're offering 99.9% uptime availability for the virtual machines, the storage accounts that exist on Azure Stack. Within the Azure Stack platform that we have currently, it does support availability sets the same way that you would get in public Azure. Obviously, we don't have the scale of public Azure, so effectively what happens there is you have an availability set, you deploy, say, 3 virtual machines into that behind a load balancer. Under the hood, Azure Stack will make sure that those 3 virtual machines are running on 3 separate physical hosts, so that should there be a host failure, then 2 of the remaining 3 virtual machines in that availability set will continue to run, and the 3rd virtual machine will be restarted elsewhere on one of the other remaining hosts.
So in terms of infrastructure platforms and a lot of things we're talking about today, some of this technology is new and consistent in terms of the approach and how Microsoft and Umbrellar have taken this to market. But hypervisors, infrastructure, storage, network compute, it's not new. We've been around long enough to know that these things are consistent. From a vendor's perspective, from both an infrastructure and hardware vendor and from a software and services vendor like yourselves, what value do you see in terms of your partners taking these services to market and the better experience it gives for your clients who are ultimately consuming Microsoft technologies?
Seeing the level of partnership that we've had between Microsoft and our MSPs like Umbrella and obviously our OEM partners like HPE, it shows that we're working on our consistency across the product suite that we're offering, and therefore we're looking to work together as a brains trust from that security perspective and making sure that the level of support they're going to get at an end customer level is delivered through the MSPs and the service providers out there, so that you're getting that consistency as well. So, for example, with Umbrella, you've got a premier support agreement that you can pass on to your customers to be able to ensure you're getting that Microsoft level support. And then, of course, we've got the great offerings from HPE in terms of their hardware appliance level of support for you as well as providers.
I think it's a very Kiwi mindset as well, the fact that not because we're disconnected necessarily, the ability to have a service provider who you can look in the whites of the eyes of that has the backing, though, of a hyperscale corporate, I think is actually really, really powerful.
Absolutely.
And it seems to me, anyway, I've 2.5 years in the country. I'm just starting to get a little bit of a sense of how it works on this part of the world. But the ability to have that local relationship that you can literally find the guy's house who owns the company who is driving your service for you, but actually is leveraging some of the longest standing infrastructure companies in the country. I mean, we've been around 22 years this year, service 87,000 customers and operate nearly 500,000 domain names and 3,000 servers for some of the biggest brands in the country. And that's the beauty of New Zealand business, right? New Zealand, that size, that you can still have a personal relationship with them.
I've been in New Zealand 22 years, and one of the things is I think people want to see the whites of your eyes. If they want to do business with you, they want to know that you're in it with them. And I think that's the beauty of what Umbrella are doing here, is that you are able to bring kind of global best practice, global best technology, to a New Zealand audience, but you're there to kind of hold their hands, and things always go wrong in IT. That's why it employs us all. And so you need somebody there you can trust. And actually, with all the stuff we talk about, it does still boil down to relationships and trust. And I think that cloud,
especially in New Zealand.
Yeah, especially in New Zealand. Cloud's fantastic. We can talk about the wonderful software that it's got and how it's all put together. customers still want to buy on relationship and trust, and I think that's an incredibly important point.
The moment of truth is the moment of crisis, right? Is what happens, where are you going to be when stuff goes wrong? And we don't want to be getting out contracts, we want to be getting out the right people out of bed to get stuff fixed. And I think that's actually the mindset that I think we've entered into specifically. That's definitely the Kiwi way of doing business, I think.
I guess that's actually been something really refreshing for me as a customer of both HPE and Microsoft. When we purchased the Azure Stack platform in the first place, it's sold as an appliance, and both HPE or your hardware vendor and Microsoft will stand behind this platform. And if you have an issue with it, you can go to either of those two vendors. Whoever you go to first will pick up the case, we'll look into it. If it needs to be dealt with by the other party, we'll pass it over in the back end reasonably seamlessly, and they'll carry on and they'll come back and they'll continue to own it. We have had to raise cases in the 12 odd months that we've had the platform in place. I guess that relationship, that process has worked as described. It's been really good. It's comforting to know that if there is an issue, we can go to HP, we can go to Microsoft, and they're going to jump on it and they're going to fix it for us.
I think also it's important to note that because New Zealand's been quite a fast adopter of Stack, and with MSPs like Umbrellar coming on board, that our team in Redmond in the US are very keen to work closely with the partners locally to get that on-the-ground feedback. And so their relationship has been built pretty solidly with yourself, David, going up there, and I think we talked about that before. That's imperative in terms of how we're going to keep developing the platform and extend the roadmap and add more to it, and at the same time fix any bugs or provide the right support.
Yeah, actually the investment that we make on customers' behalf is pretty substantial as well. You touched on it before, so Premier Support. Premier Support is the red phone to Microsoft to get the best of best engineering out of bed to come and look at challenges when they come up in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day. It's actually a pleasure working in that scenario where we know that we have the strongest possible level of support to support customers and partners when things inevitably do go wrong in quite complex environments. We're pushing technology quite hard to give the right output and the right value. And once again, I think you've got to have a certain critical mass of service provider who can do the right thing by the customer and not rely on supporting things themselves and make those investments on behalf of customers. So core to Microsoft's approach to the market is how you guys build what I believe is a phenomenal ecosystem of partners, right, that are there to support the end customer at driving the right outcomes. When we brought Azure Stack to market, we thought it was key that actually, we genuinely, our mission is to support the whole of New Zealand business and enabling them to do brilliant things with the Microsoft Cloud. But actually, we can only do that if we extend the great services that we've built out to our partners. We've done just that, and I think we can consider ourselves a bit of a mini extension of Microsoft in the country, that not only can we take our services to customers, but all of our partners across all of the competencies and practices that we have partnerships in can now take that out to market as well. And what has that meant for Microsoft in terms of you looking at Umbrella and saying, well, actually, you guys can now service the whole of the MSP market?
It's great because we've been able to work so closely with yourselves, get that reach out to the reseller community and the service providers out there that don't have the ability to host an Azure Stack appliance themselves. They also may have a lot of customers out there that say aren't ready to go 100% cloud, and they want to take those first steps. And we kind of see the Stack appliance and Azure Stack as a solution, as a means for customers to take that first step and, maybe modernize some applications or use the power of Azure Stack to have some backup and disaster recovery, because we're not short on a few disasters in New Zealand.
Well, what made this all possible was Microsoft granting us the ability to become an indirect CSP provider. And that's a process we went through over a period of 6 months. But just talk us through, from a Microsoft perspective, what you saw in us and why you gave us that ability, because it's something that's not given away easily to any
it's a
service
pretty
provider.
rigorous process, wasn't it? I think it's the agility that Umbrella offer, the cloud mentality, but with a local context. The process to become an indirect partner is not easy, and it's pretty rigorous, but I think what we saw out of the business case from Umbrella was agility and cloud first, but with local context, and also the ability to be able to understand the market and work with and deal with those service providers out there in wider New Zealand, so that you can provide that agility and access to customers. So effectively taking that stream and flowing it through partner community. Microsoft are very, very big on that partner network, and the more we can scale out.
Part of our pitch to you guys was that digital transformation is not a SKU. That was kind of the headline of what we came into the room with, right? You can't go and buy a digital transformation. And I think actually we overuse the word digital transformation now. I think we've all been in the game long enough to know that we're consistently evolving. But to embrace that and know that you can't just go and pick one off the shelf and buy one was our ultimate approach to you guys. And that partnership model of, okay, well, let's actually combine forces as a collective between the customer, the partner, and whatever digital mandate that you have, and build the right collective of partners to deliver it, knowing that we're not a a jack of all trades. We don't want to be, right? We are an infrastructure company who have service providers in service provider DNA. But when it comes to the gnarly new technologies inside of the Microsoft Cloud, AI, cognitive services, CI/CD, pipeline management, we bring the right partners to the table. And that was really our model. We considerably still believe that digital transformation is not askew. That seems to be working for us and our partners, and ultimately is recognising our partners.
I think it's working very well.
For more information on Azure Stack or any of the other services offered by Umbrella or our partner services, go to umbrella.com and hit the Contact Us button, and we'll get in contact with you as quickly as we can. Thanks to David, Andy and Paddy and the great team who've done the filming today. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Yaz. And any other questions, please read out. Thank you very much.